Chapter 18. Aunt March Settles the Question. The March girls were accustomed to a certain order in their lives, one shaped by modest means, warm affection, and quiet industry. Yet when Aunt March, the formidable and exacting relative of considerable wealth, decided to pay a visit, the household's calm and simplicity was turned upside down in a most amusing and instructive fashion. Aunt March was not a woman who traveled lightly. Her carriage was grand, her attire stately and severe, and she arrived with a retinue of servants and a stern expression that made the March girls both awed and apprehensive. "Well, girls," she said at once, sweeping into the parlor with a decisive air, "I hear your mother has been away and you have all been left to manage things on your own. I have come to see if you are capable of decent conduct and to settle one little question regarding your future prospects." The sisters exchanged glances. Meg curtsied politely, Jo frowned slightly, prepared for battle, Beth clutched her knitting nervously, and Amy drew up her chin with a touch of pride. Aunt March's proposal. "Your mother writes to me constantly, I hear," Aunt March continued, "and she speaks of you as bright, clever girls. Very well. But cleverness is of no use without opportunity. Now, Jo March, is it? I understand you have literary ambitions." Jo straightened instantly, her dark eyes flashing. "Yes, Aunt March, I write stories, and I hope to become a writer one day." "Indeed," Aunt March said, folding her hands severely. "That is precisely why I have come. I am in a position to offer you instruction, advantages, and perhaps a little independence. I could provide for you should you show the proper industry and discretion. But first I must see whether your temper, manners, and conduct are suitable to my standards." Jo's cheeks burned. "I don't like to be patronized, Aunt March. I mean to work hard regardless of who helps me." "All the better," Aunt March replied briskly. "I do not intend to flatter you. I wish to settle the question of whether you shall have your own way or be subject to my authority for your own good. Now, girls, I propose that we begin with a little arrangement. Jo, I have something to offer you, but you must behave. Will you accept instruction in art, literature, and the management of society?" Jo's eyes sparkled with a mixture of irritation and amusement. "Thank you, Aunt March, but I think I can manage my own affairs well enough. I need neither lessons nor supervision." Aunt March, however, was not a woman to be easily turned aside. She swept around the room like a small tempest, inspecting the furniture, the curtains, even the carpet. "You see, Jo," she said at last, halting beside the piano, "I can be generous if a girl is willing to accept guidance. I can give you an allowance, a home, and opportunities beyond your humble house, but I shall only do so if you are willing to follow my rules. There is no such thing as talent without order. Can you obey?" Jo bit her lip, torn between the desire for freedom and the tempting offer of support. She knew Aunt March could be irksome, commanding, and sometimes intolerable, but the prospect of having resources to pursue her writing stirred her spirit. "I will consider it, Aunt March," Jo said finally, "but only if I may continue to write my stories my own way. I cannot promise to follow every rule." Aunt March raised an eyebrow. "We shall see. time and conduct will settle the matter." During the week of Aunt March's visit, the March girls experienced her formidable presence in full measure. She inspected the kitchen, scolded Amy for careless polishing, teased Meg about her youthful airs, and, with quiet admiration, praised Beth for her calm industriousness. Jo, of course, resisted her every suggestion, quarreled over hours of study, and protested the regimented order Aunt March sought to impose. Yet in these interactions, Jo learned more than she expected. She saw the value of self-discipline, the importance of tact, and the subtle ways that wealth and influence could shape opportunity. And though she bristled at Aunt March's imperious manner, she could not help but admire her energy, decisiveness, and clear purpose. At last, on the morning of her departure, Aunt March called Jo aside. "Well, my girl," she said, "I see that you have spirit and determination, but you have also some good sense. You shall have my offer: a small sum for your literary work, some instruction in refinement, and opportunities I can provide. Yet remember, the path is yours to choose. Do not waste the gift I give you, or my intervention will be of no avail." Jo accepted with dignity, though a mischievous smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you, Aunt March. I will use your generosity, but I shall still write my stories as I please." "We shall see," Aunt March replied, a flicker of amusement softening her stern countenance. "We shall see." With that, she swept from the house, leaving behind an air of authority, excitement, and mild exasperation. The March girls laughed and recounted the visit, each emphasizing different moments of Aunt March's domineering presence. "She is a marvel," Jo declared, "but I think I have conquered her in the only important way, by keeping my independence." "And yet," Meg observed, "we have gained opportunities we might not otherwise have had. I hope Jo makes the best of them." Beth smiled quietly, content that Jo's spirit remained intact, while Amy whispered to herself, "Aunt March is a great deal, but I rather like her power." That evening, the house seemed smaller and warmer, filled with the girls' chatter and laughter. Aunt March's visit had settled questions, stirred ambitions, and left a trail of energy and ideas that would shape the coming months for Jo and her sisters. Chapter 19. The Father's Arrival. The little brown house had never seemed smaller, quieter, or emptier than it did in the first days of November while Marmee was away. Yet even amid the hush, the March girls held fast to their routines, keeping fires lit, meals warm, and spirits bright. Letters came with comforting regularity, but still the absence of their father, so long away in Washington, left a tender ache in each heart. Then, one crisp afternoon, when the sun shone pale and golden across the bare trees, a carriage rattled up the lane. Jo, standing at the window, clapped her hands with joy. "Hannah, father is coming home!" she cried, almost leaping for happiness. Meg hastened to arrange the parlor, while Beth's fingers flew over the piano keys, filling the rooms with soft music. Amy, hardly able to contain her excitement, adjusted ribbons and smoothed her skirts, wishing to look her very best. The moment of reunion. The carriage doors opened, and there he was, Mr. March, looking thinner, paler, yet strong with that quiet dignity that always commanded love and respect. His eyes searched the little house eagerly, and when they fell upon his daughters, they softened into warmth and pride. "My children," he cried, lifting a hand in greeting. "Oh, how I have longed for this moment!" Joe, unable to resist, flung open the door and ran into his arms. "Father, Father, we have kept the house just as you would like," she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. Meg hastened following, her cheeks rosy and bright. "We have managed, dear father. You need not worry." Beth approached quietly, her small hands pressed together, and whispered, "We are glad you are home, father." Amy curtsied elaborately, tugging at his coat. "I hope you are pleased with everything, sir." Mr. March, seeing their eager, beaming faces, laughed softly, a sound filled with relief and affection. "I am proud of you," he said. "You have been brave, diligent, and loving while I was away. Marmee must be proud indeed." Joe released him and took a step back, her eyes shining. "Oh, father, you cannot imagine how we have missed you. And mother?" Her voice faltered, for even the thought of Marmee's anxiety brought tears to her eyes. "She is well," he said gently, "and she would be even prouder than I am to see you all so faithful and kind. But I shall tell her nothing yet. The surprise will bring her joy." Beth's fingers strayed across the piano keys again, the soft notes like a lullaby of comfort. Meg smoothed her father's coat, as if every stitch could convey their devotion. Amy tried to chatter with him, but her voice quavered in excitement, and she ended by clinging to his arm. Settling in. Mr. March's arrival brought bustle and conversation back to the house. He asked about the stove, the sewing, the music lessons, and even the flowers Amy had tended so carefully. Joe recounted her literary efforts with pride, though modestly hiding the recent earnings she had made from her stories. "So our little Joe writes stories," he said, smiling. "I knew she had fire in her heart, but this is remarkable indeed." Meg blushed with pleasure. "She has done it all quietly, father. We only found out through hints and signs." Beth, sitting nearby with calm serenity, added softly, "She has been very careful, father, and we have tried to help her too." Evening together. As the day faded and the evening shadows fell, the little family gathered in the parlor. The fire flickered, casting a warm glow across their faces. Laughter, tender talk, and shared memories filled the room. Mr. March listened attentively as the girls recounted their experiences, their small trials and triumphs while he had been absent. "I have missed so much," he said, a touch of sorrow in his tone. "Yet now I see how strong, faithful, and loving my little girls have become. You have grown in ways I could never have imagined." Joe leaned against his shoulder, feeling the comfort she had longed for. Meg reached for his hand, Amy nestled close, and Beth, as always, radiated gentle reassurance. The family, though tested by absence and worry, was now whole again. A night of peace. That night, the little brown house felt alive with warmth and affection. The girls went to bed with hearts lightened, for their father was home, their mother would soon return, and the bonds of love that held them together had been strengthened by trial. Beth whispered softly to Joe as they prepared for sleep, "Father is home, Joe, and all is right again." "Yes," Joe answered, "and I hope Mother will return soon to complete our happiness. But even so, I never felt so content." Outside, the November wind whispered through the trees, carrying a sense of peace and promise. Inside, the March girls slept soundly, their hearts brimming with joy, duty fulfilled, and the tender satisfaction of family reunited. Chapter 20. Pleasant Meadows. The first days after Mr. March's return were filled with quiet delight. The little brown house seemed to exhale with relief and contentment, each room humming with the rhythm of family life restored. The hearth glowed brighter, the table was laden with wholesome fare, and the air seemed lighter with laughter and song. One crisp morning, Father proposed a walk to the nearby meadows, a favorite retreat from which the girls had always drawn joy, contemplation, and the inspiration of nature. The sky was clear, a gentle sun illuminating the frost-tipped grass and glimmering in the remaining autumn leaves. "Come, my little ones," Mr. March said, spreading his coat over his shoulders. "Let us enjoy the fresh air and the quiet beauty of the fields before winter takes hold." Jo leapt forward eagerly, her dark hair bouncing as she ran ahead. Meg followed, walking more steadily, but her eyes bright with anticipation. Beth moved with serene grace, carrying a small basket of sandwiches, while Amy, determined to appear elegant even in the open air, clutched her gloves and bonnet with prim attention. Joy in simplicity. The meadows were all that the girls remembered and more. The soft grass yielded beneath their feet. The distant trees, painted in gold and crimson, swayed gently in the breeze, and the horizon stretched wide and promising. Laurie, not to be left behind, had joined them, his energy blending easily with Jo's exuberance. "Ah, how I have missed this!" Jo cried, spinning in the grass and catching a leaf that drifted down from a tree. "The world seems so fresh and free here, Father." "Yes," Mr. March replied, smiling. "And here we may breathe deeply, reflect, and feel the simple joys that sustain us." Beth settled on a patch of mossy ground, unpacking the little basket with quiet care. She placed sandwiches, fruit, and a small jug of cider neatly before her sisters. Amy, having retrieved her sketchbook, began to trace the outlines of trees, leaves, and distant hills, her eyes alight with the pleasure of capturing nature's beauty. Conversation and laughter. The family strolled along winding paths, gathering near a bubbling brook. Jo and Laurie raced ahead, challenging each other to leap over fallen logs and avoid the shallow pools. Meg called after them, shaking her head with gentle reproach, but laughing all the while. "Do try not to muddy yourselves, children. We must remember decorum even in the meadows." "Decor what, Meg?" laughed Jo, tossing her hat to Laurie. "There's nothing but joy here." Beth hummed a soft tune, the sound blending with the rippling water and the gentle rustle of leaves. Her calm presence was a steady anchor, a reminder that in moments of excitement and laughter there could also be serenity and reflection. Even Amy, whose attention was at first on drawing, found herself drawn into small games with Laurie, racing to the far side of the meadow and shrieking with delight when he bested her in a playful contest. Reflections and gentle lessons. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Mr. March called the children to sit upon a blanket he had spread near a cluster of trees. He spoke quietly, his voice carrying the calm authority that had always guided his family. "Children,
These peaceful meadows remind us that the world is filled with beauty, patience, and the gentle rewards of care. We have endured worry and separation, but here we can breathe freely, enjoy one another, and remember that love and diligence keep us strong. Jo, listening, felt a softening in her restless heart. Even her bold, fiery spirit was calmed by the sincerity in her father's voice and the warmth of the late autumn sun. "I shall write more, father," she said earnestly, "but I shall also take time to notice such beauty and to treasure moments like this." Beth smiled at her sister, nodding in gentle agreement. Meg held the youngest in her arms for a brief, comforting embrace. Amy's sketches lay scattered, capturing the scene for memory's sake. Laurie leaned back on his elbows, content to rest, letting the quiet happiness of the meadow wash over him. Evening in Pleasant Meadows. As twilight approached, the family slowly returned toward home, their hearts lighter, their spirits restored. The day had been a balm for worry, a reminder that nature, love, and simple pleasures were treasures beyond measure. "Father," Jo said softly as they walked side by side, "thank you for bringing us here. I feel as if our hearts are full again." "It is good for the soul," Mr. March replied, smiling. "And remember, children, that these quiet joys are always within reach, whether in meadows or at home." Beth walked silently beside him, content in her gentle devotion, while Meg, Amy, and Laurie lingered, exchanging laughter and small stories. The little brown house awaited them, warm and bright, but the peace and clarity of Pleasant Meadows lingered in their hearts, like a gentle promise that even amid trials, happiness could always be found.
Chapter 21. Experiments in Society. Autumn had deepened into early winter, and the streets of the city gleamed with the first frost. The March girls, though accustomed to the modest comforts of their little brown house, had begun to explore the world beyond their home. It was Jo's idea, inspired by her desire to broaden her understanding and perhaps gather material for her stories. She believed that mingling with society, even if only in small doses, might teach lessons she could not learn in the quiet of Concord. "We cannot live in a bubble forever," Jo said one morning, pacing the parlor. "We must see the world as it is, not as we imagine it from our little house." Meg shook her head gently, concerned. "Jo, there is much to be learned at home as well, but I suppose a little venture will do no harm." Beth, serene as ever, added softly, "As long as we remember to be polite and true to ourselves, I think we shall manage." Amy, meanwhile, was thrilled. "Oh, imagine the dresses, the carriage rides, the music! We shall be exquisite." Jo's plan was simple. They would attend small gatherings, observe manners, and test their social skills, all while keeping to their own principles. She intended to study people, noting their characters, foibles, and virtues, which she could later weave into her tales. First impressions. Their first visit was to a tea at a neighbor's house, a genteel affair with carefully arranged pastries, delicate china, and a subtle air of formality. Jo observed everything with keen eyes, noting the bows, the curtsies, and the whispered exchanges. She found herself simultaneously fascinated and amused. "Notice, Meg," she whispered, "how they manage to smile and nod without speaking a word of sense." "Joe, behave," Meg whispered back, blushing. "You must show respect." Beth sat quietly, sipping her tea, listening attentively to the soft, melodic voices around her. Amy whispered excitedly to herself, sketching the delicate arrangements of cups and flowers, already planning her next attempt at refinement. Jo, unable to resist her curiosity, began to engage in conversation with an elderly lady, asking about books and education. The lady, startled but pleased, responded with a degree of warmth that Jo had not expected. "And what do you read, my dear?" the lady inquired. "Mostly stories," Jo replied with a frank smile, "and sometimes essays, histories, and anything that stirs imagination." "Ah," the lady said, "you have spirit. Few young ladies venture beyond novels." Jo's eyes sparkled. "Spirit is necessary, I think, to understand the world fully. Otherwise, one sees only shadows." Lessons in Manners. Over the next few weeks, the March girls attended several small gatherings, each offering new lessons in manners, observation, and tact. Meg learned to balance propriety with natural kindness. Amy experimented with elegance without vanity. Beth quietly impressed every host with her gentle demeanor and unobtrusive charm. Jo, however, found the lessons more subtle. She learned that social grace often required patience, restraint, and clever observation. She noted hypocrisy in some, vanity in others, but also generosity, courage, and dignity. She carefully recorded her impressions in her notebook, determined to capture reality, not mere appearances. "People are fascinating," Jo confided to Laurie one afternoon as they strolled in the frosty air. "There is so much to study, their speech, their actions, even what they dare not say aloud. I shall use it all in my stories." Laurie laughed. "You are already part of society, Jo, whether you like it or not, but your sharp eyes and quick tongue will make you formidable." The cost of experimentation. Yet these experiments were not without challenges. Jo found herself at odds with some social expectations. She sometimes spoke too frankly, laughed too heartily, or expressed opinions too boldly for the genteel company she encountered. Meg gently admonished her. "Jo, you must learn moderation," she said softly. "There is honor in being bold, but not rudeness. Society has rules, even if they are tiresome." "Rules be hanged," Jo muttered, but inwardly she considered Meg's counsel. She realized that freedom and independence required understanding, not mere rebellion. Beth, quietly observing, encouraged her sisters to balance propriety with kindness, reminding them that true refinement lay in the heart, not in imitation of affectation. Amy, ever eager, absorbed every detail and sought to emulate the elegance she admired, though her youthful pride sometimes got the better of her. Reflections at home. After each social gathering, the girls returned to their little brown house, reflecting on their experiences. Jo wrote in her notebook, capturing not only what she saw, but also the lessons she gleaned. Meg discussed the importance of manners and judgment. Beth offered gentle reflections on humility, kindness, and patience. Amy shared sketches and ideas for her personal improvement. "We shall not be perfect," Jo said one evening, "but we are learning, and learning in itself is a triumph." "Yes," Meg replied, smiling, "and we can return home with hearts true, ready to use what we have gained wisely." Growing awareness. Through these experiments in society, the March girls discovered that knowledge, observation, and experience were as important as natural talent or beauty. They learned the value of sincerity, patience, and discretion, and while Jo's fiery spirit resisted complete conformity, she began to appreciate the subtle art of social grace, not as a cage, but as a tool to achieve her aims while remaining true to herself. The little brown house welcomed them back each evening, warm and steadfast, a refuge where they could reflect on lessons learned and dreams nurtured. Here, ambition, love, and diligence blended, preparing the sisters for the challenges and adventures yet to come.
Chapter 22. Laurels and Lilacs. Winter had come quietly over Concord, coating the earth with frost and filling the air with a crispness that made the cheeks glow and the spirits lift. Within the little brown house, the March sisters pursued their daily labors and studies, but each felt the stirrings of accomplishment and the delight of small successes. Jo had continued her literary experiments and was growing in skill and confidence. One morning, a letter arrived, stamped with the seal of a local publication. Jo tore it open eagerly and read aloud, "We are pleased to inform you that your story has been accepted for publication." Her eyes shone with excitement. Meg, Beth, and Amy gathered around, their voices a chorus of congratulations. "Jo, this is wonderful," Meg exclaimed. "Your work, at last, is recognized." "It is the beginning of something grand," Beth added softly, her hands clasped. "And I hope it is only the first of many triumphs," Amy said, eyes sparkling. Jo, too excited to speak for a moment, finally gasped, "Laurels, they are truly mine, and yet lilacs too! This is sweeter than any prize!" Celebration and reflection. The family gathered in the parlor that evening to celebrate. Mr. March had returned from a brief visit to the city, and even Aunt March, who had been temporarily absent, sent a note of cautious approval. The candles cast a warm glow across the room, highlighting the girls' flushed cheeks and joyful expressions. Jo read the published story aloud, savoring the sound of her own words in print. Beth's soft claps and Meg's gentle exclamations mingled with Amy's delighted squeals. Laurie, who had come by to share in the excitement, leaned back in a chair, whistling softly. "Miss March, you have a genius for stirring the hearts of your readers. I cannot help but admire you." Jo flushed, but smiled. "It is only the beginning, and I am glad to have friends who encourage me." Beth, ever gentle, added, "You have earned this, Jo, with patience, courage, and kindness. We are proud of you." Recognition and social flourishes. The days that followed were filled with invitations to small literary gatherings and society events. Jo approached these with her usual mixture of excitement and apprehension. She found herself both recognized and scrutinized, her talent praised, and her spirited character noted with admiration. People can be kind and flattering, but the honest words that matter most. The applause is sweet, but the respect of those who see your true self is sweeter. The Family March girls took delight in small triumphs and joys. A flower pressed carefully in a book, a note of approval from a mentor, a gentle bow of courtesy from a friend. Amy, in particular, was enchanted by lilacs and laurels as symbols of accomplishment, and she took care to arrange small bouquets for the family parlor, their fragrance a reminder of success, effort, and recognition. Lessons in humility and joy. Amid these small triumphs, Jo and her sisters learned humility. They recognized that applause, however welcome, was not the measure of character. Beth reminded them that true achievement lay in diligence, patience, and service to others. Meg emphasized decorum and gentle manners,
while Amy found in these successes the encouragement to pursue her own refinement and artistic ambitions. Jo, reflective despite her excitement, penned a note in her journal. Laurels and lilacs are sweet, but sweeter still is the knowledge that our hearts and hands have done their duty. Recognition comes, yet it is love, effort, and honesty that sustain us. Laurie, observing her seriousness, laughed softly. "Miss March, you could make a sermon out of a bouquet of lilacs. Yet I see the truth in your words." Jo smiled, leaning back in her chair. "Perhaps, Laurie, but it is a lesson worth learning, even for a storyteller." Evening harmony. That evening the March sisters gathered by the fire, a basket of fresh lilacs at their feet, and discussed their small triumphs and aspirations. Jo spoke of her writing and plans. Meg spoke of domestic accomplishments. Beth reflected on music and gentle service. Amy shared her sketches and dreams of refinement. The little brown house was filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet, steady sense of satisfaction that comes from well-earned recognition. Though the world outside might offer more laurels and lilacs, the March sisters knew that their greatest treasures were the love, patience, and courage they shared together. "We may receive honors," Beth said softly, "but the sweetest victories are those we share as a family." "Indeed," Jo replied, "laurels and lilacs are delightful, but nothing surpasses the joy of being together." And with that, the girls settled near the fire, content in each other's company, hearts full of hope, love, and the gentle promise of many more triumphs to come.
Chapter 23. Little Women Abroad. The winter passed, soft and gentle, and the spring brought with it a hint of adventure. The March girls, now more confident in their social accomplishments and personal growth, were presented with a rare opportunity, a brief sojourn beyond the familiar streets of Concord into the wider world. While their mother remained devoted to charitable work, father consented to this small adventure, reasoning that new experiences would broaden their minds and hearts. "Girls," he said one bright morning, "you have been diligent, faithful, and patient at home. It is time you saw more of the world, even if only for a short while. You will meet new people, learn new manners, and perhaps find inspiration for your talents." Jo's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Father, this is a chance for adventure and stories. I shall take careful note of everything." Meg smiled with gentle caution. "It will be delightful, but we must remember our manners and principles at all times." Beth, serene as ever, clutched a small journal and whispered softly, "I shall bring music and kindness wherever I go." Amy, ever eager for refinement, exclaimed, "I shall learn and observe. What joy to see the fashions, the flowers, and the elegant houses." The journey begins. Their departure was cheerful, yet tinged with a bit of apprehension. The carriage rolled through the familiar streets, past familiar fields, and into the open road where the wider world awaited. Laurie, excited as ever, joined them for the journey, his lively spirit mingling perfectly with Jo's energy, Meg's prudence, Beth's gentle calm, and Amy's eagerness. "Jo," he said, peering from the carriage window, "I expect you will make careful records of all you see, and I shall keep you company in noting mischief." Jo laughed, her heart full. "I shall indeed, Laurie, and perhaps you will be my model for some of my characters." Beth quietly strummed her hearth, filling the carriage with soft music. Meg smiled at the melody, while Amy sketched flowers and glimpses of distant landscapes through the window. Experiencing society. Upon arriving at their destination, a bustling town with fine streets, elegant houses, and a variety of visitors from different walks of life, the March girls were immediately aware of the contrast with their quiet home in Concord. Their senses were filled with colors, sounds, and sights, both fascinating and overwhelming. Jo, ever observant, noticed the mannerisms of the townsfolk, their speech, and the subtle hierarchies that shaped interactions. She jotted notes in her little book, determined to capture the reality of life for her stories. "Meg, do you notice how they bow to one another, yet hide judgment behind smiles?" Jo whispered. "Yes," Meg replied gently. "Politeness can often mask pride or vanity. Remember to be sincere in all you do." Beth found opportunities to play her music for small gatherings, enchanting listeners with gentle melodies. People were drawn to her quiet charm, and many expressed admiration for her composure and modest grace. Amy, meanwhile, studied fashions, furniture, and floral arrangements with keen eyes. She noted patterns and colors, eager to emulate elegance in her own development. Adventures and challenges. Though the journey was delightful, it was not without challenges. Jo, with her fiery spirit, occasionally clashed with those who demanded excessive propriety or trivial conformity. Meg found herself balancing social grace with her own natural modesty. Beth continued to inspire with her calm presence, mediating minor misunderstandings. Amy occasionally faltered under pressure, but learned lessons in patience and poise. Laurie, ever playful, added energy and humor, ensuring that moments of tension were softened by laughter. He and Jo often explored side streets and markets, noting peculiarities of town life and amusing incidents which Jo recorded eagerly. "Look at that gentleman," Jo exclaimed one afternoon. "He struts as if the world were his stage." "Perhaps it is," Laurie replied with a chuckle. "But you shall make a better story of him than he does of himself." Reflections on growth. Through these experiences abroad, the March girls discovered much about themselves. Jo's independence and curiosity were tempered by observation and discretion. Meg's prudence and kindness shone in social interactions. Beth's gentle heart touched everyone she met. Amy's ambition and eye for beauty flourished under careful guidance. "We are learning," Jo said one evening as they sat together in a quiet parlor, "that the world is vast, full of charm and folly, and that we must carry our hearts wisely." "And with patience," Beth added softly. "And with elegance," Amy said, holding up her sketches. "And with kindness," Meg concluded, smiling at her sisters. Returning home. After several weeks, the girls returned to Concord, their hearts full of experience, their minds enriched, and their spirits refreshed. They carried souvenirs, notes, sketches, and melodies, but most importantly, they returned with greater understanding, courage, and harmony among themselves. The little brown house welcomed them, glowing with warmth and familiarity. The adventures abroad had broadened their horizons, but the home that nurtured love, diligence, and quiet virtue remained the center of their lives. "We have seen much," Jo said as they entered the familiar rooms, "but nothing is sweeter than home. Here we may use all we have learned to grow, to create, and to love one another." Beth smiled, placing her hand over Jo's, "and here we are always together, the truest reward of all our journeys." Meg, Amy, and Laurie nodded in agreement, and the March girls settled into the comfort and joy of family once more, hearts full of stories yet to be written, lessons yet to be shared, and love ever steady.
Chapter 24. Thanksgiving. The first frost of late November had painted the world in sparkling silver, and the little brown house was alive with a different kind of warmth, the warmth of preparation, care, and anticipation. Thanksgiving was approaching, and the March sisters busied themselves with plans to honor the holiday with simple yet heartfelt celebrations. Meg oversaw the preparations in the kitchen, arranging vegetables, stirring soups, and guiding Hannah in the careful baking of pies and bread. Her movements were deliberate, graceful, and infused with quiet pride in her domestic skill. "Hannah, the cranberry sauce must be just right this year," Meg instructed, stirring gently. "It is not the food alone, but the care we put into it that makes the day memorable." Beth, as ever, worked with silent efficiency. She polished the silver, set the table with neat precision, and hummed a soft tune that lent the kitchen and parlor a calm, musical air. Amy fussed over decorations, placing small bunches of flowers, ribbons, and sprigs of evergreen, eager to make the home beautiful for the occasion. Jo, meanwhile, could hardly sit still. She raced from one task to another, arranging chairs, sweeping the floors, and making last-minute adjustments to ensure everything was ready. Yet beneath her bustling energy, her heart was full of anticipation, not only for the feast, but for the happiness of gathering together. Guests and gratitude. The March family welcomed a few neighbors and friends to share in the Thanksgiving celebration. Laurie was of course present, bringing laughter, stories, and a cheerful presence that brightened the parlor. Mr. March, home from his duties, helped to arrange the guests and ensured that the day's tone was one of warmth, reflection, and gentle pleasure. "It is a blessing to have friends and family gathered together," he said, smiling at his daughters. "Thanksgiving is a time to remember what is truly valuable: love, gratitude, and the simple joys that life offers." The guests nodded in agreement, observing the careful preparations and cheerful spirit of the household. Even small children present were enchanted by the atmosphere, the colors, the smells, and the laughter that filled every corner of the house. The feast. When the meal was ready, the table groaned under the weight of wholesome fare. Roasted turkey, steaming vegetables, savory pies, fresh bread, and cranberry sauce, all laid out with attention and care, presented a feast not only for the appetite, but for the heart. "Let us give thanks," Mr. March said, raising his hands in a gesture of gratitude, "for our health, for our home, for each other, and for the blessings we have received." The March girls joined him, voices gentle yet firm, their hearts full of appreciation. Jo's dark eyes shone with quiet happiness. Beth's serene smile lent calm to the gathering. Meg's face glowed with pride, and Amy's hands fidgeted slightly as she arranged the napkins, eager to contribute beauty and order. Laurie leaned back, content, noting the harmony of the scene, the perfect mingling of laughter, conversation, and the quiet dignity of gratitude. Reflections and joy. Throughout the afternoon, the March girls reflected on the blessings in their lives. Jo thought of her literary ambitions, the support of her family, and the adventures she had experienced. Meg considered the skill she had gained in managing a household and the joy of nurturing others. Beth reflected on the gentle power of kindness, music, and service. Amy pondered beauty, refinement, and the delight of shared accomplishments. "We have much to be grateful for," Jo said at one point, glancing around the table. "Love, friendship, and the opportunities to grow. These are greater than any riches or honors." Beth nodded softly, her hands folded in her lap. "And we must never forget that even small acts of care and patience bring blessings beyond measure." Laurie, smiling, raised his cup in a silent toast, recognizing the harmony and happiness that filled the little brown house. Evening harmony. As twilight deepened, the guests departed one by one, leaving the March family in the quiet glow of the firelight. They gathered in the parlor, content and reflective, grateful for a day filled with love, laughter, and the simple satisfaction of togetherness. Thanksgiving, Meg said gently, reminds us not only of what we have received, but of what we can give. Patience, kindness, and devotion to each other. Jo leaned back in her chair, smiling at her sisters. Indeed, I cannot imagine a better celebration than this, with all of you by my side. Beth hummed softly at the piano, while Amy placed a small bouquet of late autumn flowers near the hearth. Laurie lay back on the rug, laughing quietly at some story Jo told, and Mr. March watched his daughters with pride and love. In the little brown house, the spirit of Thanksgiving lingered long after the candles burned low, a spirit of gratitude, family, and the enduring joy of hearts united in love and harmony.
Chapter 25. Jo's Journal. The little brown house had settled into a quiet rhythm following the excitement of Thanksgiving. Fires burned steadily in the hearths, the frost-kissed air lent a crispness to mornings, and the March sisters moved through their daily routines with the grace of familiarity. Yet for Jo, the heart of adventure, reflection, and observation, the days were filled with thoughts that demanded recording. She sat at her small desk by the window, quill in hand, her journal open before her. The soft light of the afternoon sun fell across the pages, illuminating the careful script she wrote with determination and care. Outside, the frost shimmered on the trees, and the world seemed at once still and full of promise. "Here is the record of my days," Jo murmured to herself, dipping the quill in ink, "of thoughts, triumphs, mistakes, and dreams. Perhaps one day someone will read and learn from them, or perhaps they will simply remind me of who I am and who I strive to become." Observations of life. Jo's journal was not merely a diary, it was a canvas for her keen observations of life, society, and the human heart. She wrote of her adventures abroad, the social gatherings, the people she had met, and the lessons she had learned. Her reflections were both candid and insightful, revealing the depth of her understanding even at a young age. "The world is wide, and the hearts of people are wider still. I have seen vanity, pride, and folly, yet I have also witnessed courage, generosity, and gentleness. It is not the attire or station that makes one noble, but the deeds and kindnesses of the heart." She paused to glance at her sisters bustling about the house. Beth played softly on the piano, Meg arranged the afternoon tea, and Amy sketched the last flowers of autumn. She smiled, noting their harmony and the quiet strength of the family bond. Ambitions and aspirations. Jo's journal also contained the pulse of her ambition. She wrote of stories waiting to be told, characters she longed to bring to life, and adventures she wished to explore and print. Her determination was unshaken by doubts or obstacles, tempered only by a growing sense of responsibility and self-awareness. "I must write with honesty, with fire, and with compassion. Each story is a piece of my heart, and it must carry truth, even when truth is difficult to face. I will not merely entertain.
I shall illuminate, comfort, and perhaps inspire. Her reflections on her literary aspirations were intertwined with her sense of independence. She knew that her talents were gifts, to be nurtured and respected, and that her path would require effort, courage, and patience. Personal growth. Through her journal, Jo also explored her personal growth. She noted moments of impatience, pride, or rashness, alongside instances of kindness, courage, and reflection. Writing became a tool of self-knowledge, allowing her to understand her strengths and weaknesses. I am fiery, I am impulsive, and I often speak too freely. Yet I am also loyal, courageous, and full of love. If I can temper the first with the last, perhaps I shall grow into the woman I hope to be. She smiled softly, recalling the lessons learned from Aunt March, social gatherings, and travels abroad. Each experience had added a layer of understanding, and she sought to record not only the events, but their meanings and implications. Gratitude and hope. No entry in Jo's journal was complete with expressions of gratitude. She wrote of her family's love, the lessons of her teachers, the guidance of friends, and the blessings of home. Even amidst ambition and adventure, she acknowledged that her greatest treasures were the steady presence of those she loved. I am grateful for the March family, for the lessons of experience, for music, laughter, and love. All else is secondary. If I write, it is to honor these gifts, to celebrate them, and perhaps to share them with others who may need courage or comfort. Her pen lingered over the page, tracing words that carried both hope and determination. She envisioned a future filled with stories, achievements, and the continued nurturing of character and heart. Evening reflection. As the day drew to a close, Jo set her journal aside and gazed out the window at the frost-laden fields. The sunset painted the horizon in warm golds and pinks, a reminder that even after the coldest days, beauty and promise remain. I shall continue, she whispered to herself, to write, to grow, to observe, and to love. Each day is a page, each experience a chapter, and I am the author of my own life. Her sisters gathered near the hearth, the soft glow illuminating their faces. Jo rose, joining them, carrying the quiet satisfaction that comes from reflection, gratitude, and hope for the future. In the little brown house, the spirit of growth, ambition, and familial love endured, as steady and warm as the fire that lit their evenings. Jo's journal, though private, was a testament to a young woman's heart and mind, a record of lessons learned, dreams nurtured, and the promise of stories yet to be told.
Chapter 26. The March Sisters' Plans. The early winter days were crisp and bright, and the little brown house hummed with the quiet energy of thought and preparation. Each of the March sisters had begun to consider the paths their lives might take, weighing personal ambitions, moral duties, and the bonds that held them together. Jo, always restless and eager, paced the parlor with her journal under her arm, her mind full of ideas. Meg sat by the fire, reflecting on household duties and the social responsibilities she had begun to embrace. Beth, gentle and steady, tended her music, preparing to nurture both heart and harmony wherever she went. Amy, eager for refinement and artistic pursuits, spread her sketches across a table, dreaming of travels and accomplishments. "We have grown, sisters," Jo said suddenly, stopping her pacing. "And it is time we consider what our futures hold. We cannot remain the same little girls forever." Meg nodded thoughtfully.
Indeed, Joe, we must be prepared to take on responsibilities, to cultivate our talents, and to act with wisdom and care. But we must do so without losing our hearts or our principles. Beth, in her soft, calming voice, added, I hope that whatever we choose, it brings joy not only to ourselves but to others. That is the true measure of success. Amy, her eyes bright with excitement, spoke eagerly. I wish to travel, to learn, to draw, to perfect my skills. There is so much to see and do, and so many ways to grow. Joe's ambitions. Joe's mind was consumed with literary pursuits. She dreamed of stories, plays, and narratives that would carry her thoughts and observations into the wider world. Yet she also felt the weight of responsibility toward her family and the home that had nurtured her spirit. I cannot remain idle, but neither can I abandon the little brown house or the happiness of my sisters. I must find a balance between ambition and duty. Meg smiled gently. You are fiery, Joe, but thoughtful as well. I have no doubt you will manage both if you keep your heart true. Meg's domestic vision. Meg, meanwhile, reflected on the household and her own role in society. She wished to cultivate elegance, order, and refinement, both for herself and for those around her. Yet she did not wish to sacrifice sincerity or warmth for appearances. I desire a home that is comfortable, welcoming, and filled with love. I shall strive to balance propriety with kindness to make life both graceful and heartfelt. Beth nodded approvingly, her gentle demeanor affirming Meg's intentions. Amy, ever attentive, observed her elder sister with a desire to emulate both her sense of propriety and her natural sweetness. Beth's quiet purpose. Beth, ever modest and serene, considered her quiet contributions. Music, kindness, and gentle service were her instruments for touching the lives of others. She sought not recognition or fame, but the satisfaction of improving the hearts of those around her. I wish to help, to comfort, to bring harmony wherever I go. Even in small ways, we can make the world gentler and brighter. Jo smiled at her youngest sister. Beth, you are the heart of this family. Your work, quiet as it may be, has more power than most realize. Amy's ambitions. Amy, ambitious and sensitive to refinement, planned travels, artistic studies, and the cultivation of social grace. She dreamed of painting, drawing, and experiencing life in its most cultured forms, all while maintaining the virtues and affection she had learnt at home. I long to see the world, to capture its beauty, and to grow into the best version of myself, Amy said with enthusiasm. Yet I shall never forget the lessons of home. Meg smiled approvingly. Ambition is good when guided by principle and love. Remember that, Amy. Harmonizing dreams and duties. The sisters discussed their plans late into the afternoon, balancing enthusiasm with prudence, dreams with duty. They realized that while each had her own path, their hearts were intertwined, and their choices must honor the family that had nurtured them. Our plans differ, Jo said, but they all aim at the same thing: growth, happiness, and the betterment of ourselves and others. We shall each pursue our dreams, yet support one another always. Beth reached for her sister's hands, joining them in a circle of quiet affirmation. Together we are strong, and together we shall flourish, no matter where life takes us. Laurie, who had been listening and laughing quietly at their deliberations, spoke at last. You sisters are remarkable. Each of you has ambition, grace, and courage. I am proud to know you. Jo laughed, the firelight dancing in her eyes. And we shall see what the future brings, with hearts ready for every adventure. Evening reflection. As twilight fell, the March sisters settled by the fire, their minds filled with possibilities and their hearts full of determination. Each envisioned her path, each felt the spark of ambition, and each recognized the guiding power of love and principle. We are young, but we have learnt much, Jo whispered to herself, gazing into the glowing embers. The world awaits, and we shall meet it as little women, strong, brave, and true. Beth played softly on the piano, Amy arranged her sketches nearby, Meg kept watch with serene composure, and Jo wrote a few final lines in her journal, sealing her thoughts for the night. In the little brown house, amid warmth, light, and love, the March sisters rested with hearts full of plans, dreams, and the unshakable bond of family.
Chapter 27. Aunt March Visits. The little brown house had settled into the familiar rhythm of winter, the hearth glowing warmly, and the March sisters engaged in their daily pursuits. Yet one morning a message arrived that stirred both excitement and trepidation. Aunt March would be paying a visit. Meg's brow furrowed slightly, Jo's eyes sparkled with anticipation, Beth's gentle smile remained calm, and Amy's fingers twitched with nervous energy, eager to impress. Aunt March was formidable in her presence, sharp-tongued, decisive, and possessing a keen eye for propriety and for the weaknesses of those around her. "I suppose she will have plenty to say about our behavior and our household," Meg remarked, arranging the curtains with careful attention. "She always has opinions," Jo replied, grinning. "And I, for one, am eager to hear them. Perhaps I shall take notes." Beth hummed softly at the piano, trying to create a soothing background, while Amy fussed over her appearance, straightening ribbons and gloves with meticulous care. Aunt March arrived. At last the carriage rolled up the lane, and Aunt March stepped from it, her eyes sharp, her demeanor commanding. She swept into the parlor, noting everything with critical precision, the arrangement of furniture, the neatness of the hearth, the composure of the girls. "Well, well," she began, her voice both stern and approving. "The little brown house appears tidy. I see that some effort has been made, though I wonder if it is sufficient to instill proper habits in young women." Jo could not help but smile. "Aunt March, we have tried our best, though I suspect you shall have plenty to correct." Aunt March's eyes narrowed at the jest, but a hint of amusement flickered. "Jo, you are as impertinent as ever. Let us see whether this household meets even a fraction of my expectations." Observation and critique. The visit was both lively and instructive. Aunt March moved from room to room, offering sharp observations and pointed advice. She commented on Meg's management of the household, Beth's gentle music, Jo's writing and energy, and Amy's appearance and taste. "Meg," she said, "you must not be so lax in teaching propriety. Young ladies must learn restraint as well as kindness." "Yes, Aunt March," Meg replied with polite submission, though she inwardly smiled at her aunt's predictability. "Jo," Aunt March turned to her niece, "you write too boldly. Literature should instruct as well as entertain. Do not forget the value of decorum in your stories." Jo's eyes twinkled. "Aunt March, I shall remember that, though I hope my stories may also spark imagination." Beth's soft voice intervened gently. "Aunt March, perhaps imagination and decorum may coexist." "And beauty, too, Aunt March," Amy, clutching a small sketchbook, added eagerly. Lessons in wisdom and prudence. Despite her sharp manner, Aunt March's visit carried lessons for each sister. She praised diligence, encouraged ambition, and reminded them of the importance of balance between propriety and individuality, ambition and humility, and refinement and genuine character. "You girls are clever," Aunt March said at last, settling in the parlor. "But cleverness without discretion is dangerous. Ambition is good, but it must be guided by principle. Do not forget that." Jo nodded thoughtfully. "We understand, Aunt March. Your advice is
stern, but valuable." Aunt March muttered, though her eyes softened slightly. "You have grown. I see some promise in you yet." Beth's serene smile and gentle manner seemed to earn more approval than she might have imagined, while Amy's careful attention to elegance reflected well on her keen sense of refinement. Meg's steady composure and leadership in the household were noted with measured satisfaction, departure, and reflection. When the visit concluded, Aunt March prepared to leave, her presence leaving the house both energized and slightly frazzled. "Remember my words," she said sharply, "and do not squander your talents or your opportunities. Life is not kind to those who neglect diligence, propriety, or ambition." "We shall remember, Aunt March," Jo replied respectfully, though her mischievous smile lingered. Once the carriage disappeared down the lane, the March sisters exhaled, their hearts a mixture of relief, amusement, and contemplation. "She is fearsome," Meg said, shaking her head. "Yet her advice has merit." "Yes," Jo agreed, "and she always makes life more interesting." Beth resumed her soft piano playing, the gentle notes filling the house with calm. Amy carefully arranged her sketches, inspired to improve her skills. The sisters gathered near the fire, reflecting on the lessons Aunt March had imparted, the balance of ambition and propriety, of courage and kindness, and the importance of wisdom in every action. "Visits from Aunt March are never dull," Jo said with a laugh, "but they remind us that growth requires attention, reflection, and sometimes patience." Meg smiled, Beth hummed, Amy arranged, and Jo wrote a few notes in her journal, capturing both the humor and the guidance of their formidable relative. The little brown house, warm and lively, held the echoes of advice, laughter, and gentle admonition, reminders that family, even when stern, guided with love and a desire for betterment.
Chapter 28. A Little Freelancing. Winter's quiet held the little brown house in a gentle embrace, but for Jo, the season was anything but still. The taste of ambition had taken root, and she was determined to turn her writing into both an occupation and a calling. Having reflected in her journal, observed society, and tested her skills, she felt ready to embark on a new venture, freelancing. "I cannot sit idle while stories crowd my mind," Jo declared one afternoon, pacing the parlor with her notebook clutched in hand. "I must sell my work, test my abilities, and prove that I can support myself by what I know best." Meg, folding freshly laundered linens nearby, looked up with a gentle frown. "Jo, it is admirable, yet you must proceed with caution. Not all opportunities are honorable, and society's eyes are often quick to judge ambitious young women." "I shall be careful," Jo replied, with that spark of determination that so often defined her. "But I cannot ignore the chance to grow and provide for myself, and perhaps I shall even help our family in small ways." Beth, serene as always, smiled softly. "I shall play for you, Jo, if music can bring inspiration while you work." Amy, ever eager to refine her skills, clutched the pencil and sketchbook. "I will note everything, Jo, every letter, every opportunity. I shall study your example." First efforts. Jo began by sending short stories and essays to local periodicals, addressing each submission with the seriousness of a professional. She dressed neatly, arranged her papers, and even rehearsed polite greetings and inquiries to editors, though her fiery spirit lent both charm and a touch of unpredictability to her visits. "Good morning, sir," Jo said at the office of a local editor, bowing lightly but with characteristic confidence. I bring some stories for your consideration. I hope they may be of interest." The editor, a stern man with spectacles perched on his nose, regarded her critically. "Young lady, we receive many submissions daily, but let us see if your work merits attention." Jo placed her carefully written pages on his desk and waited, her heart racing. Minutes passed like hours, yet she remained composed, her pen ready to jot notes or ideas for improvement. Successes and setbacks. Her initial submissions were met with both encouragement and critique. Some editors praised her originality and lively style, while others suggested revisions or rejected stories outright. Jo faced these setbacks with characteristic courage, learning that freelancing required patience, resilience, and a willingness to accept criticism. "Rejection is not failure," Jo said to Laurie one afternoon, after returning from a particularly discouraging visit. "It is a lesson in persistence and humility. Each critique sharpens my skill." Laurie, lounging in a chair with the book, smiled. "You are determined, Jo. Few young writers would endure as you do. But your passion is unmatched, and that is half the battle." Beth offered her gentle support. "And remember, Jo, that even small successes carry value. Each published story, however minor, is a triumph." Practical independence. Through freelancing, Jo began to earn a modest income, enough to buy herself supplies, contribute small amounts to household needs, and feel the satisfaction of independence. Each coin earned was accompanied by pride, yet tempered by humility and gratitude for her family's support. "It is strange," Jo remarked one evening, tallying her small earnings, "to hold in my hand the fruit of my own labor. Yet it brings joy, more than I expected. Not wealth, but confidence and freedom." Meg smiled warmly. "And you deserve it, Jo. You have worked diligently, honestly, and with purpose. That is a greater reward than riches alone." Amy, ever observant, whispered eagerly, "I will study your methods, Jo. Perhaps I shall earn something in time too, though in art, not words." Lessons learned. Through her early experiences as a freelance writer, Jo discovered valuable lessons: the importance of diligence, the necessity of tact and politeness in society, the reality of setbacks, and the sweetness of small triumphs. She also deepened her understanding of human nature, observing editors, patrons, and fellow writers alike. "Life teaches lessons in ways one cannot anticipate," Jo wrote in her journal that night. "Some are harsh, some kind, but all shape the character. I shall continue to learn, to write, and to persevere." Beth, glancing over at her sister, offered a serene nod. "And we shall support you, Jo, as always. Your courage inspires us all." "Indeed," Meg added, "your independence does not separate us. It strengthens us as a family, showing what is possible when one pursues both ambition and principle." In the little brown house, ambition, love, and diligence intertwined, creating a space where dreams could take root and flourish. Jo's foray into freelancing was but the first step on a journey of independence, creativity, and the pursuit of personal fulfillment.
Chapter 29. A Trip to the City. The first days of spring brought a sense of renewal to the little brown house, and with it, a stirring of anticipation. Jo had been invited to accompany Laurie on a short visit to the city, a prospect that promised both adventure and new opportunities for her literary endeavors. Though Meg cautioned her about the distractions and perils of city life, Jo's excitement was impossible to contain. "Oh, Laurie," she exclaimed as they prepared for departure,
The streets, the shops, the crowds. I cannot wait to see it all, and I shall gather stories while I am there. Every face, every carriage, every market stall shall give me something to write about." Laurie laughed, adjusting his coat. "I thought you might say that. But remember, Joe, the city has lessons as well as stories. One must keep wits about oneself." Beth, gentle as ever, smiled from the doorway. "Be careful, Joe, and remember that home will always welcome you. Music and calm will await your return." Amy, eager and artistic, clutched her sketchbook. "I wish I could go too, but I shall imagine the city through your eyes, Joe, and draw from your tales." Meg adjusted Joe's scarf with affectionate care. "Remember to carry yourself with discretion. Adventure is exciting, but prudence is always necessary." Arrival and impressions. The city was a dazzling spectacle. The streets bustled with carriages, pedestrians, and merchants calling their wares. The architecture was grand, with tall buildings and elegant shop fronts lining the avenues. Joe's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she absorbed every detail, her mind already weaving characters and plots from the scenes before her. "Look at that crowd, Laurie. Every person seems to have a story waiting to be told. The city is alive with tales." Laurie smiled indulgently. "And some of those tales are more mischievous than others. Stay close, Joe, and remember your manners." Joe laughed, scribbling notes in her pocket journal, determined not to miss a single observation. Even the cries of street vendors and the clang of carriage bells became fodder for her imagination. Cultural excursions. The sister's cousin, Laurie, guided Joe to cultural delights, a museum displaying exquisite paintings, a theater showing a lively play, and a library filled with volumes both old and new. Joe marveled at each one, taking careful notes, sketching ideas, and reflecting on how the city's energy could enrich her writing. "Art, music, and literature are alive here," Joe whispered to herself, eyes wide. "Every hall, every gallery, every stage offers inspiration." At the theater, Joe observed the actors' expressions and the audience's reactions with keen attention. She made careful sketches of gestures and noted dialogue that stirred her imagination, eager to incorporate the subtleties of human nature into her stories. City lessons. Despite the excitement, Joe encountered the challenges of city life. Crowds jostled, manners were less certain, and some individuals proved rude or haughty. Yet these encounters taught her important lessons in patience, observation, and the complexities of human behavior. "The city is not always kind," she reflected to Laurie as they walked along a busy avenue, "but it reveals truth about people, truth that cannot be learned at home alone." Laurie nodded. "Indeed, and you, Joe, are observant enough to learn from both the delights and the annoyances." Beth's gentle voice echoed in her memory. "Patience and kindness are virtues to carry everywhere." Joe resolved to maintain her courtesy while absorbing all the lessons of this bustling world. Chapter 30. Joe's first play. Spring had fully arrived in Concord, and with it came longer days, bright sunlight, and a spirit of creativity that pervaded the little brown house. Joe, brimming with ideas from her recent city adventures and her growing literary endeavors, had been struck by an irresistible inspiration. She would write and stage her first play. "I have stories to tell," Joe declared one morning, pacing the parlor with a notebook clutched in her hand. "But stories on paper are not enough. We need action, dialogue, costume, and the thrill of performance. Sisters, I propose a play." Meg, tidying the hearth with gentle diligence, raised a brow. "Joe, you know little of stagecraft.
Are you certain this is wise?" "I am certain of nothing," Jo admitted, her eyes sparkling, "except that we can try. Beth, Amy, you must help with music and costume. Meg, you shall guide decorum and structure. Laurie, you may be my willing actor and critic." Beth's soft smile expressed serene enthusiasm. "I shall play the piano and provide accompaniment, Jo. Music lends grace and harmony to performance." Amy, excited by the prospect, clutched her sketchbook. "And I shall design costumes and props. We shall make the play elegant as well as lively." Writing and rehearsing. Jo set to work immediately, her quill moving swiftly across the paper. She crafted characters, dialogues, and scenes with the keen attention to detail that had made her freelance stories so successful. Laurie offered ideas for dramatic effect, while Meg advised on propriety and pacing. Beth lent her music to enhance the mood, and Amy sketched imaginative settings and costumes. "Remember," Jo instructed during rehearsal, "every gesture, every inflection, every glance must reveal character. Stories live in action, not just words." The sisters devoted evenings to practice. The parlor transformed into a miniature theater. Simple chairs became stages, curtains were improvised, and the firelight added a warm, flickering ambiance. The air was filled with laughter, gentle corrections, and spirited encouragement. Trials and triumphs. Jo's first play was not without challenges. Lines were forgotten, gestures misjudged, and timing faltered. Yet with patience, guidance, and the shared enthusiasm of her sisters and Laurie, the performance improved steadily. "Jo, your heroine is bold, but remember, temper fierceness with subtlety," Meg advised kindly during a pause. "And your villain must reveal motive, not merely menace," Laurie added with a grin. Beth's music underscored emotional scenes, while Amy's costumes charmed the eye, and Meg's thoughtful guidance ensured smooth transitions and elegant comportment. Performance and applause. At last, the evening arrived for a full performance, presented to a few friends and neighbors. The little brown house, adorned with simple decorations, became a theater filled with warmth and anticipation. Candles flickered on mantels and tables, while the audience, quiet and attentive, waited for the play to begin. Jo took her place as both writer and director, guiding the action with keen awareness. The sisters and Laurie performed with enthusiasm and care, bringing characters to life in a way that delighted and amused the audience. Beth's music stirred emotion, Amy's costumes charmed the eye, and Meg's thoughtful guidance ensured smooth transitions and elegant comportment. "Bravo!" cried the audience at the conclusion. "What talent! What ingenuity!" Jo bowed, cheeks flushed with pride, and glanced at her sisters, whose eyes shone with shared accomplishment. Lessons in creativity and collaboration. The play taught Jo many lessons. She learned that writing could leap from the page to the stage, that collaboration with others enriched her vision, and that patience, guidance, and flexibility were essential to creative success. Yet more than anything, she realized that the joy of creating something together was a reward beyond words. Stories are powerful, Jo reflected afterward in her journal, but they become magical when shared, performed, and felt. I have learned the value of collaboration, the delight of expression, and the satisfaction of bringing imagination to life. Laurie, relaxed and content after the applause, smiled at Jo. "You have a remarkable gift, Jo. To direct, to write, to inspire, this play is only the beginning." Indeed, it is only the beginning, but what a beginning it has been, full of laughter, music, and the bond of family. evening reflection. The evening ended with the sisters gathered by the fire, basking in satisfaction and warmth. Jo wrote a few final lines in her journal, recording both the triumphs and the lessons of the day. Beth hummed a soft lullaby. Amy arranged sketches of costumes and props. Meg reflected on the harmony and decorum that had guided the performance, and Laurie recounted favorite moments with humor. In the little brown house, imagination and affection intertwined, creating not only a play, but memories that would linger in hearts, inspiring courage, creativity, and the joy of shared endeavor. Jo's first play had been staged, and with it a new chapter in her journey of ambition, artistry, and self-discovery had begun.
Chapter 31. Mommy's Illness. Spring's bright promise had begun to fade into the heavy heat of late May when Mommy, always the heart of the little brown house, fell suddenly ill. Her usual calm energy was replaced by weakness and pallor, and a quiet concern settled over the March household. "Girls," she whispered one morning, her hand clutching Meg's, "do not worry. It is only fatigue, a passing weakness. You must continue your work and studies." But Meg, vigilant and tender, would not be reassured. "Mother, you must rest. You have given so much, and we cannot bear to see you suffer. Beth and I will help in every way we can." Jo, fierce with determination, bustled about the house, tending fires, preparing broth, and taking on tasks Mommy had always managed. "I will not allow illness to overwhelm you, Mother," she said firmly. "We shall care for you together." Beth's gentle hands prepared medicines, warm compresses, and soothing music, while Amy fidgeted with her sketches and decorations, determined to create a cheerful environment that might lift her mother's spirits. Concern and devotion. Laurie, noticing the somber mood in the household, offered support with gentle words and quiet acts of kindness. "If I can help in any way, you must tell me. Mommy has always done so much for you all. Now it is time to care for her." Mommy, weak but always graceful, smiled at the attention. "Thank you, Laurie. But the greatest comfort is knowing my daughters are courageous, loving, and steadfast. You care for me simply by being yourselves." Days of vigil. The days that followed were tense and slow. Mommy rested in her favorite chair, wrapped in soft shawls, while the girls took turns reading aloud, preparing meals, and tending her with unwavering devotion. Jo's lively energy softened into careful attention. Meg's patience deepened. Beth's calm presence became a steady anchor, and Amy's anxious fidgets turned into thoughtful acts of service. "Mother, please try to sleep," Jo urged one evening. "Your rest is our hope, your health our greatest desire." "I shall try," Mommy replied weakly, "and I am comforted by your care. Never forget that love and courage make the heaviest burdens lighter." Beth's soft piano melodies floated through the parlor, lifting spirits with gentle harmonies. Jo read aloud passages from her writings. Laurie shared stories and cheerful anecdotes, and Amy arranged flowers and fresh linens to brighten the room. Even small acts, a cup of warm tea, a carefully folded handkerchief, a reassuring smile, were magnified in importance during these delicate days. "Each kindness matters," Beth whispered. "Even in the smallest ways, we can ease suffering and offer comfort." Amy nodded, her sketchbook now filled with drawings inspired by Mommy's grace under trial. "Mother's spirit guides us," she said softly.
reflection and gratitude. As Mommy's strength slowly returned, the family reflected on the lessons of illness, the value of devotion, the power of shared responsibility, and the importance of gratitude for health, love, and resilience. "We are reminded," Jo said one evening, writing in her journal by the fire, "that life's trials teach patience, humility, and care. Love is not only felt, but shown in action." Meg's eyes shone with tears of relief. "Our mother is strong because we are together, and we are stronger because of her guidance." Beth's quiet smile and Amy's careful sketches bore witness to the unity of the family, while Laurie's calm presence reassured everyone that support often comes from both family and true friends. Recovery and reassurance. Mommy's return to health was gradual but steady. She resumed her gentle supervision of the household, though she allowed her daughters to share in her duties more fully than before, understanding that strength comes from mutual care. "Do not fear for me," Mommy said one afternoon, her hand resting on Jo's. "I am restored not only by medicine, but by love, devotion, and the courage of those I hold dear." Jo, filled with pride and gratitude, clasped her mother's hand. "We will always care for you, Mother. You are the heart of our home, and we shall never forget your love." The little brown house, once quiet with concern, regained its warmth, laughter, and harmony. Lessons had been learned, hearts strengthened, and the bonds of family deepened by shared devotion and the enduring love that guided them through even the most uncertain days.
Chapter 32. Jo's Ambition. Spring's gentle warmth had returned to Concord, and with it a sense of renewed energy in the little brown house. Mommy's recovery had restored calm and harmony, and the March sisters resumed their daily pursuits with refreshed spirits. Yet Jo, ever restless and determined, found her thoughts increasingly drawn to the horizon of her own ambitions. "I cannot settle merely for comfort or routine," Jo told herself one morning, pen in hand. "There is a world of stories within me, and they demand expression, challenge, and reach beyond this house." Meg, noticing Jo's thoughtful intensity, approached cautiously. "Jo, ambition is admirable, but it can also be consuming. Have you considered how it will affect your heart, your relationships, your life at home?" "I have," Jo replied firmly. "I know that ambition is a companion, not a tyrant. I shall not sacrifice love, duty, or kindness. Yet I cannot ignore the call to write, to create, and to pursue independence in my own way." Beth, serene as ever, added softly, "Jo, your heart is brave and generous. Ambition guided by love will bring fulfillment, not sorrow." Amy, her eyes bright with curiosity, chimed in eagerly, "And success, Jo, will inspire others, perhaps even me, in my art." Determining a path. Jo had been offered opportunities to contribute to periodicals and collaborate with editors in the city, and she now contemplated a more deliberate plan for her writing. She recognized that talent alone was insufficient. Discipline, persistence, and careful strategy were essential to achieving her goals. "I shall write every day. I shall learn from criticism, experiment with styles, and test myself in forms beyond short stories, novels, plays, essays. Each endeavor is a step toward mastery." Lowry, who had accompanied her on previous literary excursions, offered encouragement. "You are fearless, Jo. I see your fire, and it inspires me. But remember, ambition without reflection can blind the spirit." "Reflection shall be my companion," Jo promised. "I will write with heart, with honesty, and with purpose. Fame or wealth is secondary. Truth and creativity are paramount. Balancing ambition and family. While Jo's mind brimmed with plans, she was keenly aware of the importance of family. Her ambition was not to pull her away from home, but to grow, to strengthen herself, and to contribute both materially and emotionally to those she loved. "I shall not forget you, sisters," Jo said one afternoon, gathering them near the fire. "Each story I write, each success I achieve, is because of the home, the love, and the lessons you have given me. Ambition will never sever that bond." Meg nodded approvingly. "Ambition guided by love is a noble pursuit. We shall all support each other's paths, and in that we shall flourish together." Beth offered her gentle smile, her fingers brushing the keys of the piano. "And music, laughter, and comfort shall always await your return, Jo, no matter how far your ambition carries you." Amy, eager to emulate her elder sister's determination, whispered, "I shall watch you closely, Jo, and learn how to follow my own path with courage and creativity." First steps toward independence. Jo began to organize her writing systematically, setting hours, submitting work, corresponding with editors, and carefully recording her progress in her journal. Each small achievement bolstered her confidence and strengthened her sense of independence. "It is exhilarating," she wrote, "to see words take form, to feel thought transformed into story, and to know that my efforts carry meaning beyond these walls. Yet as I grow, I remain grounded by love, family, and principle." Lowry observed her dedication with quiet admiration. "You have the heart of a pioneer, Jo. Few would approach life with such purpose, courage, and passion. Your ambition is matched only by your integrity." Dreams and reflection. That evening, as the sun set over Concord, Jo sat by the window with pen in hand, reflecting on her journey thus far and the path ahead. She recognized that ambition carried both excitement and responsibility, that creativity required patience as well as inspiration, and that independence could coexist with love and duty. "I wish to write stories that uplift, enlighten, and inspire. I wish to live fully, courageously, and with heart. I wish to honor my family, my friends, and myself. This is my ambition, not for glory, but for purpose, growth, and truth." The little brown house, warm with evening light, and the quiet hum of family was both anchor and springboard for Jo's dreams. She felt exhilaration at the challenges ahead, gratitude for the support around her, and determination to pursue her ambition with courage, love, and steadfastness.